A woman in her middle years had been through several stressful events, but she had come through them, perhaps not with flying colours as she might have liked, but sufficiently well that she said, I call her Linda, Linda said, they did not leave me stranded. I can say I was able to get on top of each one of them. But then she said, but this one has hit me in these last few weeks, and this is a life-altering event. And she told me about it. And then I said, but now you're into another life-altering event. Because the moment you chose to walk through the door, you are opening yourself to the possibility of another life-altering event. In fact, I want to say to every Linda and to every Laurie, if you like, here today, if you've been through a life-altering event out there, now as you walk in here, you can open yourself to another life-altering event. You know the way the distressing event can happen. Something happens, it was not in the lucky dip. It's enough to stop you in your tracks. And you're stuck and you say, what do I do now? Usually before you get to the likes of me, you've spoken to 6 people. And so you come carrying the messages of 6 people. Your mother, she said, you've got to go back and do that and that and that. And you reply, how can I do that? So you go to your sister, and your sister says, I told you this would happen. Now it has happened. So you go to your best friend, and your best friend says, join the club. I'm in the same situation in my work as you are. So you then move down the line to your 4th best friend. And your 4th best friend says, oh, jeepers, I don't know what you can do. So then you remember your auntie, and your auntie was once a counsellor of some kind, and she says, Linda, you've just got to do what we all have to do at times like this. But Linda says, I've lost all my energy. I'm just like the old dog curled up on the mat. Perhaps you watched that real-life court case on television the other night. The man before the court received a jail sentence. The victim felt it was far too light a sentence. Far too light in view of the victim, what the victim had been through. And he and his wife stood there, reliving their memory, recalling the experience, clearly showing the lasting damage to their life and how the energy for the future was draining out of their faces as they stood there. We all run into some such event, and it seems to seal us there to the spot. We need to get connected with that resilience factor. But where is it? Was a time when the resilience factor was full of energy and we bounced back. There we were. Why does our resilience run out of bounce? Why? Well, we have 5 quick reasons why. We run out of resilience because the distressing event was too big for us. The load was too heavy. The distressing event caused us too much damage. So resilience is gone. Or the resilience event doesn't come. The distressing event quickly becomes part of several people's events. People from the present, people from the past, events from the present, events from the past. There they are, and we're overwhelmed. Or the distressing event occurring, and it keeps occurring. And you feel as if you don't have a leg to stand on, because every time you try to stand, it comes and knocks you again. Or fifthly, the whole event attacks you in the middle, in yourself. It pulls the foundations away, and you're likely to fall in a heap, and often that's just exactly what we do. Our resilience needs rebuilding. And that means rebuilding some strength back into the weakened and damaged inner self. That means healing the damaged parts. That means steering our life through our everyday adversities in a way that we don't keep bumping into the hazards again and into those damaging parts. It means being aware of the concealed icebergs floating just under the surface, and they can capsize us at any times. Resilience means getting your inner energies started. But sometimes our energies don't start. Of course, we know the times when they just quickly started, no problem. But sometimes it's as if we've been stuck on the road, engines won't start, and we've been there for ages. We can respond to this situation psychologically, if you like, or we can respond to it theologically. Today, I'm going to respond to it theologically. And let's see if you can see if it's any different from the psychological. So in the parable of the sower, the story has Jesus speaking. And he was saying, first of all, life and growth, survival and flourishing depend on the health and the energy of the environment, the soil into which the seed is sown. Secondly, he says, resilience depends on the seed not being gobbled up by too many diffuse cares and anxieties. Thirdly, he was saying, resilience is getting in touch with those resources of positive energy, a good faith. And fourth, he said, resilience is keeping alive a strong sense of who you are and where you will focus your life. Resilience, you see, if you're in touch with that resilience, it releases you to growth. It releases you to a new phase of life. We all need that resilience, even in our worst times. We most certainly need it. But so often it's difficult. I can imagine that man in the courtroom scene saying, I can never forgive that fellow. I can never forgive him for his wild, out-of-control behaviour, his violent attack. I can't get any release from that. And we know, you know, that books upon books have been written on the conditions of forgiveness. How love should be unconditional, all that. Like resilience, of course, forgiveness can occur spontaneously and without a fuss. But often it remains like an unattractive lump that has developed around the break in your arm or the break in your leg. That break occurred 23 years ago, yet that big lump is still there. Sometimes that lump is there because of what someone did to you 23 years ago. Sometimes that lump is there because you never sought the proper help and healing to get the lump to go away. You all know. You all know those many stories that speak to us so loudly. Forgiveness is not possible. Forgiveness is not appropriate. You need to experience a release, lest we build up a store of resentment and hate, of indignation and pain. But how can you? Some of you know that I've been reading about the Crimean War, in which Britain lost 20,000 men. The French lost 100,000 men. The Russians lost 127,000 men. And the Turks and the Romanians, an unknown number. A war of enormous stupidity and incompetence, if the history books are right. And of course, we ourselves in our time know the huge losses that occurred in the Vietnam War and afterwards, and now in Afghanistan. The waste of life. As the song said, when will we ever learn? But our focus today, here in this address, really comes down to how the parents of those young men of years ago or present day, how the parents of those young men and women can ever forgive the stupidity of those wars. But not only those parents, what about the other people, the other people, the parents of the tiny kids, now orphaned by the brutalities of war? Forgiveness? Forgiveness? How can you talk about forgiveness? Of course, we need release from the emotions that cluster into our brains and bodies. We need release so that those other people do not continue to cluster into our brains and bodies, and we're carrying them around when they're walked off scot-free. We need release so that in the very depths of our self and our soul, we will once again be able to grow and flourish. I read from Gina Stepp's book. A long history of research has shown that holding on to resentment, hatred, and anger has measurable negative health consequences that can manifest themselves in a variety of forms, from emotional and cardiovascular problems to a weakened immune system. There it is. We get brain jammed. We get mood jammed. We get emotion jammed. That it's as if we are the seed scattered on the surface of life, exposed to the externals of life and to the inner miseries of life, and our spirit shrivels up. Daniel Goldman, he wrote these words: "Forgiveness does not require condoning some offensive act, or forgetting what happened, or reconciling with the perpetrator. It means finding a way to free oneself from the claws of obsession about the hurt." Or I could add a little different phrase or clause at the end. A way to free oneself from the claws of obsession which wrap themselves into our hearts. Released. Can we get release? We sometimes need to absorb a few simple stories to get an image of the possibility. The Chief of the Defence Force, Air Chief Marshal Angus Houston, about to retire, spoke of one of his men who lost a hand and a leg in a 2009 shark attack in Sydney Harbour. But he returned to his post of clearance diving for the Navy. When such things can happen, we can look again for the courage and the character in ourselves to release our minds that get so quickly tangled and jammed in the day-to-day conflicts. Release of the mind leads to a change of emotion, a change of direction, a change of commitment, a change of perspective, a change of self-strengths. And so that leads us to an evolution of the mind. We can get our release, perhaps, if we can believe in an evolution, an evolving mind. It may be difficult for you to recognize any evolution in the human species when we are killing each other with far greater ferocity than the people way back in pre-Old Testament times. Yet I believe if we look at ourselves, though we might not see an observable species evolution, we might see our various cultures are showing some real signs of evolution. We've moved a long way from the widespread, hidden genocidal wars to experience some of those controls exercised by the United Nations. We've moved a long way from the brutality of the black slavery to the freedom marches of Martin Luther King way back. We've moved a long way from the epidemics of polio and smallpox to what the World Health Organization can now do. We're seeing an evolving process in people's attitudes and behavior, in their minds, in so many fronts. The environment, on race, on sexuality, on women, on human rights, on religion, or even what love means and how love can also evolve from what it once was thought to be. These big issues depend upon an evolving creative mind. Now that's rather different from the process of development. We're all part of a developmental process, I hope, from birth through to old age, from our beginning primary narcissism through to our cooperative way to relate to each other. But in addition to that pathway of development, which is there, we can have evolutionary spurts as we become part, perhaps, of some organization or some new idea that our ordinary development would not have included. So an evolving mind takes us beyond the expected parameters of ordinary development or our ordinary experience. We might read books that we never thought we would ever bother to read. We might hear music and start to appreciate music that we thought was well and truly beyond us. We might learn about human existence from a totally new perspective. We become friends with people across many foreign boundaries and borders. Or we might even begin to see that religion, once closed down in the corridors of antiquity, can become a real energy that speaks to our life, to growth, to fullness and flourishing. The evolving mind, if only we can get in touch with us, releases us to explore the experience and the intelligence of a new faith in ourselves, a new faith in the possibilities that open before us, a new faith that really does make a difference to our life. Last night, I was able to grab a few critical moments to watch a television program about Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease is a disease with a severe tremor that can be quite crippling. It's a neurological disease. It can also change us to have a mask-like appearance to the face, a very disabling disease. Well, the television program last night was about a man teaching a whole group of people with Parkinson's disease. He was teaching them how to dance. How to dance. What's more, he was teaching them to smile as they danced. And that dancing program, Dancing with Parkinson's, is now in 22 states of America and 5 different countries. And one man of the class looked up and he said, "For a brief moment, dancing releases me from Parkinson's." A brief release, but the look on his face showed it was a powerful release. Would you stand?